Welcome to Jewish Path to Success channel, and in this episode we will be discussing taking actions. Now, I was inspired to talk about this topic because of this book. It's called it's a biography of the late Lubavitcher Rebbe, the life and teaching of Menachem Mendel Schneerson, the most influential rabbi in modern history, by Joseph Telushkin. I actually bought few of those different biographies just for to read and learn a little bit more about the Rebbe. But one thing actually struck me right away as you read this biography, that the Rebbe, the late leader of a Jewish nation, he was all about actions. It's taking actions, taking actions, taking actions. And while reading this book, I remembered a very interesting conversation I had with one elderly Jew many years ago in early 90s when I was living in St. Petersburg, Russia. After collapse of Soviet Union, was chaotic time, and I was actually getting closer to Judaism at that time. Was taking some classes and lectures in the synagogue, and I met this elderly Jew, which was full of that Jewish wisdom, and we were discussing about successes the state of Israel has accomplished at that time: military, economic, and social success. And we were discussing about taking actions, how a Jew takes actions, how the Torah and how the Judaism teaches us how to take actions. He started with the very interesting, very eloquent line, which I still remember till this day. He said like this: "A Jew is not a noun; it's a verb. A Jew is not a noun; it's a verb," implying that the way your actions are defining who you are, not your words, not your philosophy. Well, that's obvious. But in Judaism, it goes much more deeper than that. There's 2 points I would like to discuss. The point number 1, that your ideology, your philosophy, your ethical system must translate into the actions. It's worthless. It just sits in your writings and your words and your thoughts. And if it doesn't affect your actions, to illustrate that, it's a famous story about Aristotle, who was teaching ethics in an ancient Greek university, and he was caught doing some illicit actions with a prostitute. His students confronted him, and he told them, "You know what? There in university, I'm actually a philosopher. Here on the street, I'm a man." You could see that this dichotomy between in actions, even though he's a philosopher, but it doesn't really translate in his actions. So when you see the people like this who talk one thing and obviously acting differently, there's no truth to it. So the actions define you. So if your philosophy, your ideology must translate into the actions. So the Judaism is very important. How we take that, trying to correlate, try to fuse our understanding, our philosophy, our ethics with the actions. Let me illustrate it a little bit more by bringing this story. For instance, if you find yourself in a situation when you have a choice to reap immediate benefits, follow path A and reap immediate benefits, or follow path B, which corresponds to an ethical system, many people not always aware about they would actually probably going to go and take a path A and reap immediate benefits. But in Judaism, when you find yourself in a situation when you have a choice between immediate benefits and following your ethical and your ideological path, you will always choose that path B, which goes by the ideology rather than immediate benefits. Which it brings me to a story about a Soviet scientist, the father of Soviet H bomb, the hydrogen nuclear bomb. He and his team was successful, be able to develop this a bomb with enormous destructing power, and they actually used that bomb in experiment. And experiment went well. It's they blew it up somewhere in north. It was enormous, enormous destruction power. I heard that the wake wave after the explosion actually traveled along the globe like twice or something like that. So because of that success, put that scientist and his team, Professor Sakharov, academic Sakharov, to the height of his career. He was very powerful and very famous scientist. But when he, usually when the people find themselves in such a situation where you see that you can accomplish immediate growth and reap those benefits, people would actually choose that. Just go ahead, let's build another bomb, let's even more powerful bomb. And the government coming, the Soviet Union government that time requested to build even more powerful bomb. Not with the Sakharov. The Sakharov was not just a scientist; he was a very strong ethical person. He wasn't afraid, and I mean he was afraid, but despite his fear, he stood up he stood up to this powerful, fearsome machine, Soviet Union government, KGB and all that. He said to them, I'm not building this bomb anymore. My team's stopping here because it's unethical to build a bomb more powerful than this one. It's gonna end the humanity. It's gonna bring so much destruction and suffering. I'm stopping here. Because of that, he was sent to the exile. His career was lost. His team was disbanded. But nonetheless, he followed his ethical principle, and when later on he became a dissident. Nonetheless, when even though he lost the career, but he didn't lose his human and this powerful image of him as a principled and ethical person, which later on actually helped him a lot. As the Soviet Union was kind of coming to the end and all that, he was able to he gained a lot of political power because of that in a way, and he was able to influence a lot of things. And he wrote that in his book and his memoirs, and I still remember that line. He said that the decision made on ethical principles now will bring most pragmatic results in future. Meaning, even though maybe you kind of feel sorry that you didn't reap those benefits, immediate benefit the situation would bring if you would take a path A, but by taking path B, my ethical and principled path, in future it will bring much more results. Meaning, you maybe lose right now a little bit, maybe you lose $100 right now, but eventually, using those principles and ethics, it will come back to you at even tenfold. That's number one. And the second point is that it's a story which goes back to Jewish people accepting the teaching from God, 10 Commandments and Mount Sinai. They said Naaseh v'nishma, what meaning that we act before, but then we will understand. Meaning we actually act before we even try to understand something. That's something, this kind of concept, this kind of approach to taking actions really puzzled me in the beginning, and I just couldn't understand, because the common understanding, the common sense would dictate, you kind of try to have some kind of concept, idea, or plan before you start acting, right? The Jewish approach is actually a little bit goes the opposite direction, saying you start acting, and then that's actions will actually bring you some more understanding. As I would say, understanding comes with experience in a way. So we always put actions sometimes even ahead of our understanding of the situation. And once I understood this concept, it's really helped me a lot in life, especially when I'm working in a hospital and you have sometimes complex situations with the patient. A few years ago, we had this patient who came in a coma. He's a young guy, and he has few conditions going on, and we couldn't figure out what exactly behind this coma, either because of the buildup of the fluid or because he had a stroke or something. But we didn't have a clear picture or understanding. But I asked at that point which condition would call for immediate action, and the one of the condition was calling for immediate actions. We took that actions, and person actually woke up, and his life was saved. So we didn't have a clear picture, but nonetheless we took the action. Patient woke up, and we understood actually that actually was the last piece in the puzzle, which gave us more understanding actually into the condition. And that's true in life. You never, even with all this information technologies, Google, Facebook, and all that, you never gonna have full picture before you decide to act. So when you have a choice, this act or not to act, and you're afraid to take an action because you don't have a full picture, act. It's rather in Judaism and the Jewish understanding, Jewish philosophy, and Jewish mindset. It's rather you take an action and make a mistake rather not to take an actions and regret later. So, as a conclusion, actions always speaks louder. Stop thinking, stop planning. You want to be successful, do actions. Take a first step. Small, big, take a first step. You will understand as you start walking the path.